Welcome to another episode of Got Time with Christopher John, your scholar and gentleman in a hoodie. During the 1930s, Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated initiated A Voteless People is a Hopeless People as a national program. While many of black folks had the right to vote, there were many systemic measures preventing them from voting. Poll taxes, threats of reprisal, and a lack of education about the voting process. Voter education and registration have remained a dominant focus of the program's outreach activity. In the 1990s, the focus shifted to include political awareness and empowerment. As we think beyond voter registration, we must remain mindful that our access and responsibility to vote is tied to the hope of today and tomorrow. Joining me is a woman with a remarkable legacy. She made history in 1995 when she became the first black person elected to the Springfield Township Board of Trustees. She became the first black woman to serve as chair of the Hamilton County Democratic Party in 2018, and the first black person to serve as chair of the Hamilton County Board of Elections in 2019. She continues, I repeat, she continues to be a leader in the community and a resource, a valuable resource for voter education. Miss Gwen McFarlin.
Thank you, and it is my great pleasure to be sitting at the table with you this afternoon as we continue to talk and fight for democracy and voting rights and voter education, not only in our community, but at the state, local, and national level as well.
Tell me it is needed. It is needed.
Absolutely.
I'm gonna start this conversation. I'm gonna ask you a question. When I say this name, if this means anything to you, Thomas Mundy Peterson.
No.
So
educate me.
Absolutely. Now, what I find is that there's a lot of wonderful information in our black history, especially when we talk about voting. Now, Thomas Mundy Peterson is recognized as the first black person to vote in an election on March 31st, 1870.
Oh, my goodness.
Following the ratification of the 15th Amendment, the election was a local vote on whether to revise the city charter. Find it fascinating with that information about Thomas Mundy Peterson and how it was a local vote, not a presidential vote, but a local vote. So I want to ask you, can you share with us your first voting experience for you?
My first voting experience was actually when I went to Miami University to secure my degrees. Mm-hmm. And I grew up in a rural county in Ohio. My parents were farmers, so they were not political. My dad, the only thing about my father was, I didn't realize until later when I was graduating from Miami University that he had an interest in politics, but it was subtle. My mother had an interest in the movement, so I have a nice blending of both of that. And so when I went to Miami University, I got involved with civil rights protesting. Mm-hmm. And of course, I went and registered to vote to be a part of that process so I could get a deeper understanding of why we were protesting at Miami University for civil rights. And I did not receive that type of education in the rural county where I grew up, because I was definitely a minority there.
Mm. Yeah, Miami has this wonderful history about, fighting voter suppression.
That's correct.
And about vote registration, Freedom Summer and whatnot. So you were at the institution, that fostered that spirit that you talked about.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I asked that question because in preparation for our conversation, I had to really think about myself and my voting experience. And my producer, Ron, and we were having a conversation, and he just shared, he didn't think I was going to do this, but I'm going to share this story because I think it's a beautiful story. he was exposed through the voting process through his mother. His mother would take him to the polls. And then when he was eligible to vote, they went together. And then he talked about how it became somewhat competitive to where he tried to beat her to the polls to vote and look at the name on the register and whatnot. And I just thought that is a wonderful story of how, if there's any parents listening, to this episode, is take your children with you to the polls.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's very important because it builds that good civic habits, good trouble, as we were talking about before we got on air. So, I definitely wanted to, talk about that.
That's important because with my kids and my grandkids, my kids grew up with me. Their father was not really a political person, but I was after I left Miami. And then our children grew up with me involved with politics in Hamilton County and in Cincinnati, Ohio. So the person that mentored me when I first came to Cincinnati, because she thought that I needed to be tamed down a little bit because I was more like Angela Davis, I guess that's what she said, and that was Marion Spencer. Yes, and she said, you're an outsider here, and you need to tame down a little bit, and I'm going to help you. And so the first really serious campaign I got involved in, and my children were involved, was with Marion Spencer, hitting the street, knocking on doors, dropping literature, attending rallies, and et cetera.
I'm trying to think how fiery you must have been, because Marion Spencer, that's the same Marion Spencer that raised all kind of good trouble at Coney Island and to get that integrated. So you must have been, you had a fire under you for sure.
Yes, absolutely. That was the best part of my growing up, let's just put it that way.
Wow. Well, I definitely want to talk about what we are experiencing today. And so there's a lot of information. There's a lot of misinformation.
There's a lot of misinformation is the answer.
Absolutely. And so how can we navigate all that and not get voter fatigue? And for those, voter fatigue is the disinterest when folks feel overwhelmed by the amount of information or misinformation regarding candidates and issues. And so how can we best empower ourselves so we don't get fatigued in that way?
From my perspective, we have to take any, dissertation about shaming people because they are not voting, to motivating them to want to vote. And most individuals want to vote, but they don't know how to vote, who to vote for. They are very concerned and apprehensive about what they're seeing, and some people have just detached from all of the radios, TVs, and ads. So you have to go to where the people are and not expect them to come where you are. And meeting people, for example, in the church, I'm mobilizing and working with a large group of the faith-based community in Hamilton County for those pastors and rabbis to bring in individuals to get them registered to vote, but you have to educate them as well. And the educational process is critical because people are tuning out the media and everything. And it's important for individuals to know that the direction the media is going now, where they're trying to also silence individuals like you, individuals like the federal TV stations that are under federal control. And so we have to get to where the people are. And then when we are working together in unity, help individuals understand that their voice is their vote. And there's power in your vote, and your vote matters. That's the most important thing.
Right. It's almost the thought process is that, you're not going to get quality information from mass media.
That's true.
And so you have to be grassroots. It's boots on the ground.
Exactly.
Is the approach in the need at this time.
And stay visible. And what I really enjoy with the faith-based community is they have become over time much more strategic about who they will allow within the church walls. For example, if you were there and when the candidate, or as a candidate, let's say it was me, was running, and then they don't see me anymore until it's time to run again, you're not welcomed in that faith-based community. You have to stay connected and help educate individuals regarding who is running and the best message and what that person's bio looks like, what that person has done for the community. And we find that when, as the chair of the Democratic Party, when I stepped in, there were very few of Democrats, let alone African Americans like you and I. And the goal was to bring in individuals, help prepare them, educate them, and make sure that they've also done some work in the community and be able to move forward from there.
And when you say move forward, because one of the things that I've always talked about, we talk about voting, but there's another level to that. That's also your right and your opportunity to run for elected positions.
That's true.
And it is my opinion is, I believe the spirit of white insecurity, that's what I call it.
Yes.
That is the greatest fear.
That is.
You know, and I think that's the one thing I think is a part of need of not only so that people won't be intimidated to vote, but don't be intimidated also to run for office or position, right?
Yes, and no matter what the landscape appears to be, because there are many candidates, including myself, when I decided I was going to run, I was told, well, you need to move into the city because there's no Black leadership out in the county, and the kids, I didn't want to take my kids out of the school system, and so I decided to run out in Springfield Township. And I was told that you're never going to get elected because they've never had anyone that looks like you. So I had 3 strikes against me. One, I was a woman. Second, I was a Democrat. And one, I was a Black woman. So I did not know which of those 3 strikes was the fatal one, but I pursued it so that they all became a win-win for myself.
Can you share, how was that process? I mean, you talked about all those odds that were against you, and I introduced you with, you know, all these firsts, and you talked about how the odds are against you because you're in the county and not in the city. So can you just share that process, and what do you think enabled you to be able to achieve what you achieved?
Goes back to my family roots, because I think being raised the way I was in in a rural county, and having to deal with the racist comments that were often thrown at us where we were. But then when I got to Miami University, my dad and my mom always said, there's nothing that you can't do. You just have to make up your mind to do it, and you do it. And so that had a lot to do with, I think, where I am. But for me, I had to use those, what appeared to be negative thoughts, and turn them into positive thoughts. But I had to be very strategic as well. So when I ran, I never put my first name on the ballot.
Oh. Okay.
And because my name is McFarlin, I used green yard signs, so people thought I was Irish.
I love it.
That
okay.
I think those were factors that helped me to win.
Wow. It's amazing. It's a strategy, right? You even the color of your yard sign plays a factor.
Yeah.
Well, you know what, either to use your full name or your last name. I just feel that, but that's needed because you had, as you said, you had all these barriers against you. So you had to be strategic. Now, I'm assuming that this was after you went through the process and you went to the Marion Spencer School.
Yes. Marion Spencer 101, and, yes.
Wow, outstanding. So, during this voting cycle and during these current times, right now we're recording and many people have already registered for the primaries.
Yes.
My one question is this: is if people have not registered to vote within a allotted time for here in in this state is April 6th.
That's right.
But are they eligible to vote or register to vote before the elections in November, or right now if you haven't registered, it's
if they have not voted as of today and before the Board of Election closes, you got until today to do it. So if you drop your ballot, your registration ballot in the drop box, which, by the way, they are trying to delete drop boxes across the whole state of Ohio. But if you drop it in there and before they close, then you should be able to vote. There was a young lady that we registered yesterday at the church. She was born in 1995. She had never, ever voted. And from her perspective, I said, why have you not voted? And her comment was, I didn't really understand a lot about it until I got involved with this church. And the church educated me about why it was important for me to vote. Now I need to continue to receive support and help on how to vote and who to vote for. So it's even though if a person does not get registered for the primary, we're still taking their registration ballots so they can be prepared for the general election in November.
Okay.
So that is so critical. And also, if you have a 17-year-old and their birth date is before November, you can register them to vote before like today, but they can only vote on issues, but they'll be ready to vote come November.
Okay.
So it's important to really, when you look at this young lady, she was born in 1995. So that's, she's part of that generation that we're trying to bring in to the helm.
She's 30, right?
Yeah, 30, 31.
A couple things stood out when you shared that story is that, I'm thinking about we have an education system. And is either by design or neglect of really not educating students about the civic duty and responsibility of voting. It's amazing to me. And as I said, it's as I get older, maybe it's by design, to do that. So you have someone who's 30 years old and they're voting for the very first time. I know that for me, growing up, I neglected voting for the first 7 years I was eligible. It wasn't until I was 25 that I actually, voted. And I grew up in Indiana, so I can relate to growing up in, you talked about a rural area and whatnot, I grew up in cornfields and surrounded with, it was, so I do understand and get that.
But I think it's becoming more by design. I think in a way that it has been, but it's been a transition that is happening slowly. So it's our job and our role as citizens to get into the school system, through their history classes, however you can get in. If they have a history teacher, normally the history teacher has been in the past open to that, but you come in a nonpartisan manner.
Absolutely,
you must do that. But the bottom line is, it's nonpartisan, but you have to vote, and that's part of your right. Teaching individuals why it's your right to vote, and understand how your vote matters, and understand who these individuals are that are running, and then get the kids, if you can, which is what I learned, you can get, if a kid's in a history class, sometimes the history class supports them getting involved with a campaign of their choice. They did that more so when I first came to Cincinnati than they do today.
Right.
And then, so working with the NAACP helps in that manner as well, because you come in and working in the church, and a partisan manner. And you continue to move forward in that direction, but you are educating the individuals about those things that matter to them and their family. And if you have a person who is an adult who's very concerned about voting rights, and you have a candidate who is doing everything they can to suppress the votes, you make sure you educate your children that this person is not who we want to vote for because they are not supporting voting rights and voter education.
Right. So you're teaching them to vote for your best interests and your principles versus sound bites and clickbait.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Now, you talked about registration. I want to talk about resources. What type of resources are out there available for registered voters?
First of all, you have to help individuals complete the form. And the educational part is helping them understand how to complete the form so that they succinctly complete the form and do not leave one thing out. If they leave one minor thing out, then their vote does not matter because they cannot get registered.
Are you referring, you mean for the registration process?
Right.
Okay,
yes.
Understood. Yes.
So that's important. And then for early voting, the same thing, because there's a lot of misinformation going around that absentee ballot is going to become null and void, and you have to let them know that it's not, and this is the way you complete that form. So teaching them how to complete that form, again, is critical, because if they have had a name change, but they forgot to do the voter registration, and you always make sure that they are up to date first on their voter registration form. And or if this is the first time, especially individuals who don't have, quote, passports. There's this misrepresentation regarding the fact that you must have a passport. Well, you don't yet, but the Save American Act is going to make that a stipulation. And so that's one of the most damaging piece of legislation that's coming before. So you educate your people, and then you educate them regarding who is supporting the SAVE Act, American SAVE Act, and that person is not a person you want to vote for. So it's voter education. Working with resource is the NAACP is an excellent resource because they're there to help educate individuals. Now with the Hamilton County Board of Election, they've become a little more aggressive, and which is good, because the person who is the Secretary of State right now, who should be helping to enhance voter registration, has not done that in the past. He's been part of that team that wants to suppress the vote in their own way, and he supported gerrymandering. So he's running for an office. You need to educate the individuals regarding what he's done and what he has not done, and then leave that up to them to make that choice.
So are there, you talk about education, so are there, you talked about the NAACP, and we have another guest that's going to come on, and I'm quite sure we're going to dive in a little bit more of that. Are there any other resources outside of the NAACP as far as to get information about voting process, for us?
Getting involved in your community. The church is doing a great job going where other people do not go. Any events that coming up in the community, there should be a person there to do voter registration and voter education, and then providing materials for them and educating them. For example, if you go on the Hamilton County Board of Election website, let's say that you don't know who to vote for, you don't even know what your ballot is going to look like. You can go into that website and find your ballot, your sample ballot. And when you do that, or if you don't have access to a computer, get your young folks to help you do that. And the ballot will be printed out. You can see exactly what your ballot is going to look like. And then you can vote accordingly, right, with the support of somebody who has some knowledge about who those candidates are. And candidates are very visible as well. And again, candidates that are running, it can be confusing because, especially with the primary coming up, you may have two individuals, let's say you're a D or an R, and you want to make sure that you get the right person. Then if there's two people there, you make your choice regarding who you think is the most appropriate person that's going to meet your needs and has been very visible and verbal in the community.
Right. I definitely encourage people to go to your board of election and get that ballot, those sample ballots. And I know that I went in preparation for this I looked in, I pulled up mine, and I saw that I found out that there's 55 political parties throughout the nation. Some are not qualified in certain states. And so when I pull up my ballot, I see there are actually 3 sample ballots.
That's right.
There's a Republican, Democrat, and a Libertarian.
That's right. That's
and
right.
so, and what I did was I was curious enough, and I feel that we need to be curious enough, is I pulled all those sample ballots because I wanted to look at everybody who is running.
That's interesting.
And to get familiar with their names and what they're doing. I know which ballot I'm going to go with, but I wanted to be curious enough and informed enough and to see all these individuals who are running. And so I encourage people to have enough curiosity to do that.
And that's what we should do. And also go where most people don't go. And also recently, because of all the gerrymandering and everything that's occurring, individuals' voting locations or polling locations that they've been accustomed to going to, this is another kind of confusing thing for them, is all of a sudden, historically, that they're not accessible. They've referred them to a completely different polling area. And so when you look at the fact that there are 362 precincts in Hamilton County, and some of those have double, triple polling locations, and some have just one. So you want to make sure that you know where you're going. So just recently, and I'm going to show you this is for anyone, because of the gerrymandering, they should receive this in the mail, which tells them that their voting polling area has changed.
But let me tell you something. What you're looking at, I received a mailing about making sure you're registered to vote, but it came 2 to 3 business days before the deadline.
And this did too.
It was almost like I'm already registered, but I'm thinking to myself, this information should have came out in the mail 2-3 weeks ago at least.
This just came last week to my house. And so if I've been accustomed historically to always going to the location I've always been to, then all of a sudden I'm not going there. I may show up and find out and be very, very voiceful that this is where I'm supposed to vote, but they're telling you can't vote there. And if you insist on voting, they may say, okay, you may be able to, but you'll have to do a provisional unless you go to the new location that's been assigned to you.
Right. Well, this has been great. I want to thank you for, sharing time, and I want to. You asked me about this book,
yes,
and I definitely want to talk a little bit about this. Dr. Carol Anderson, I believe she's still at Emory University, a brilliant scholar that I've had the opportunity to bring to the museum here, I believe in 2018 or 2019. And this book is One Person, No Vote, How Voter Suppression is Destroying Our Democracy.
Yes, it is.
And so definitely, you said you're going to get you a copy.
Yes, I am.
Encourage everybody to get a copy of this.
I definitely am.
It is very relevant to the times we are going through here today. And so a great book, but definitely.
Absolutely.
And if you have any trouble getting it, let me know.
I certainly will. Absolutely.
Well, I want to thank you for taking the time, sharing your wisdom. I also want to take the time to just share thank you. Thank you for your spirit of what you've done throughout your whole career, running, educating us about, voter empowerment, voter registration, and all that you do. You have been a blessing to the county. You've been a blessing to the city. And I just want to make sure I'm giving you your flowers, your bouquets, because I just want to thank you. I've been watching you.
I kind of get that impression, and I stay humble because as I said, the work is yet to be done, and we have to be those individuals that help move our people forward, improve and increase the voter turnout, because it's very clear in certain aspects of our county, the voter turnout is not good. So where those low turnouts are, and I know that the NAACP, we're all working together to try to enhance that and increase the turnout so that those individuals are not afraid to go to the polls and that they know how important that their vote matters.
Absolutely, because I know sometimes the percentage of registered voters not showing up, it's disheartening.
And the vote, the total ballot,
Yes.
especially when it comes to the judicial candidates, because they're normally at the end of the ballot. So educating individuals, don't just stop at, let's say you're just going to stop at the issues, or you're going to start at the issues, but you vote the total ballot, because if you don't, the drop-off has been very high when it comes to the voter turnout as well, when people don't vote the total ballot.
Okay, vote the total ballot now. Well, thank you once again. Thank you for coming to the table and spending time with us.
It's a pleasure.
Coming to the table is a dedicated leader in civil rights and social justice, serving as both the president of the Cincinnati NAACP and the political action chair of the Ohio NAACP. He serves as the voter empowerment chair for the most worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Free and Accepted Masons, where he oversees voter engagement initiatives. He brings years of experience in community engagement, voter empowerment, and economic advocacy to his roles. Mr. David Whitehead.
Thank you, Chris. It's a pleasure to be here today. I am glad to have this opportunity to just talk with you.
I am as well. I don't believe our paths has crossed previously, so it's great to have you here at the table. Thank you that I know you're a busy man, especially this year and with everything that's going on, so I appreciate you taking the time.
Yes, whenever the community calls, that's my job to get there. And when Ms. Gwen McFarlin calls, it is my job to get there.
Absolutely, absolutely. Our warrior,
yes,
for sure.
Yes.
I want to talk a little, before we get into, other things, I want to get a little personal a little bit, if you don't mind. I want to talk about voting habits. I think, as I shared previously, that my voting habits early on when I became an eligible voter was not that great. My wife, on the other hand, hers was a little bit different. She went to Lincoln College Preparatory Academy in Kansas City, Missouri, and in her school, they talked about voting and talked about the process, educated her about the process. So upon graduation, as soon as she was eligible to vote, she hit the ground running, which I find amazing. And so my question to you is, who or what shaped your voting habits?
Well, a lot of it is always going to be whatever is within your home. Your home is the first place for education. So my parents, especially my mom, was an advocate for voting, but I also had great-grandparents. My grandparents were awesome. They believed in voting. They cherished the opportunity to vote because they didn't have it originally. So once they had the opportunity to not have to do a bean count in order to cast their vote, then they were always active in regards to it. And we were taught that at home. My mom, being an educator, talked about civics and civic education. And my granddad, being one of the first potentates here in the city of Cincinnati, knew that he had to be voted in order to be in office where he was in his leadership. Right. So they talked about it. So it was a foundation for me. So it wasn't anything that I had to get extra because it was within my home. And this is what we always encourage people to, educate your kids, bring it back to them, because you can't depend on the school to have to do the responsibility of things we can easily do ourselves. Right. And my school talked about it, but they just brazed over it. It wasn't a big push at the time. It was more what you got in your home.
Right. So you mentioned something. I want to make sure I didn't go over it. You said bean counter.
Yeah.
For my audience, for our listeners, please share.
So once upon a time, during a very segregated and very Jim Crow era, that our grandparents, some of our grandparents had to be smart enough to be able to figure out how many beans were in a jar, how many, steps they had to take in order to get down the street to the polling place to even be eligible to vote. Being a very good friend of Otis Moss III, his dad, Otis Moss Jr., told his story to us in regards to how he had to go to multiple different places just to cast his vote in hard bottom shoes. Like, they wasn't wearing gym shoes. They didn't have all the luxury gym shoes to be able to go. And he was walking in hard bottom shoes in order to cast his vote. And they just kept pushing him and pushing him and pushing him. And it's sad, but this is what I understand in regards to what our history is.
I understood what you meant, but I wanted to make sure our listeners understood. And I brought this because when I worked in the education department at the museum, we had here literacy tests.
Yeah.
And so this is a literacy test from the state of Louisiana. And I just want to share a little bit of this. First, it says, do what you are told to do in each statement, nothing more, nothing less. Be careful, as one wrong answer denotes failure of the test. And you have 10 minutes to complete the test. You have 10 minutes to complete a test that has 30 questions. That averages around about 20 seconds per question. Mm-hmm. And I just want to share now this is for people to be able to vote. I just want to share some of these questions. In the space below, write the word noise backwards and place a dot over what would be its second letter should it have been written forward. Draw a triangle with a blackened circle that overlaps only its left corner. Third question, another one. Draw in the space below a square with a triangle in it, and within that same triangle, draw a circle with a black dot in it. And this one right here, print the word vote upside down, but in the correct order. I've read that several times. I don't know what that, print the word vote upside down, put in the correct order. That's the question. Yeah. It's amazing the levels folks went to prevent the process of voting happens.
Yet we voted.
Right.
Yet we voted. There are people that studied for those tests, passed those tests so that they can cast their vote because they know voting matters. And one of the difficulties that we have now with this generation, with multiple generations, is they don't understand the why. And the why is what matters. I had an individual, because we do a project with the reentry program. So when they're returning citizens coming and getting the opportunity to vote, and the gentleman told me he don't believe in voting and he won't vote. I said, well, when there was a jury up there and you saw that jury that was in front of you, do you wish it would have been somebody that had the right mindset of you that was going to judge you? And he's like, yeah. I said, well, you can't have that happen unless you register to vote in Ohio. You cannot be on a jury unless you've registered to vote. So if you're not voting, you're not getting on a jury. If your friends aren't voting, they're not getting on the jury. And you have to understand that concept. This is your why, because you want somebody that look like you and represent some of the same ideas that you have in that jury box. Let's start there.
I'm glad you brought that point, because that's one thing I don't think we talk enough about. I mean, we talk about mass incarceration, we talk about the percentages of us being incarcerated, but that part of that process is serving on a jury, but you can't do it unless you're a registered voter.
Absolutely.
And so I'm glad you brought that up and to mention that. The big question right now is this SAVE Act. And we alluded to it before. And I've had a few people, really, and for those that are not aware, the actual full name of it is called Safeguard America Voter Eligibility Act.
Correct.
So, can you speak to whatever trepidation listeners may have with this taking place? Of course, we talked about our responsibility to vote, but what we need to be looking out for in regards to that particular push that's taking place?
Well, the first thing is 21 million Americans don't even have the documents necessary to meet the requirements that this act is asking for. 21 million. You take 21 million votes off the table. We don't even want to get into the fact that the birth certificate and the voting registration for a married woman has to agree. So now take another step. If I'm economically challenged, can I go get a passport? Or why would I even need a passport if I'm economically challenged? Because I'm not going overseas. I'm not leaving Ohio to go to Kentucky. So now you disenfranchise someone that is economically challenged. You've disenfranchised women. If you move, you change your voter registration because there's a change of address that happens. Well, you need a documentation in order to do that change. A lot of people don't even know where their birth certificates are. So now you got to take that step. And we're solving a problem that don't exist. They haven't been able to find all this voter fraud, all these people that aren't citizens.
Less than 1%, right?
Yeah.
Or something like that?
It ain't even that many. It ain't even that. They're solving a problem that don't exist in order to put this other stuff in. Because let me tell you where the real trick bag is. The real trick bag is 90 days you used to get reprieve on voting purges. In regards to, they're going to safeguard you for 90 days if you were already on the list going into the election. We're trying to move it to 30 days. What happens in 30 days? You're no longer eligible to vote if you haven't registered 30 days prior to the election. So today is 30 days prior to the election, April the 6th. So if you are purged tomorrow, you're done. You have no opportunity to register to vote.
So hold on, let me ask you this question. So if you're not registered, that means you will, at this point, you won't have an opportunity to register for the November?
You can register for November. You can't register for the primary.
Okay,
so like
understood.
Tomorrow, you can go register tomorrow, but you're only going to be eligible for November.
Understood. Okay.
But you're purging people in a tight window, and there's a lot of mistakes that they know happens with purging. When they purge, some people that have voted actually get purged on accident. You can't go correct that. What you got to do is file a provisional ballot. That's back to the provisional ballot. So here's a really good trick. Let me get the list of everybody that don't agree with me, because that's what they're asking for. Let me get the list of all the voter rolls. So now I can look at the voter rolls and see who don't agree with me. And now they accidentally get purged in that 30-day window. So now you done eliminated all them votes. At least you put them in a provisional ballot status. We're not even talking about checkers or chess. We're talking about deliberate voter suppression. We're talking about intent to take an election away from the people and the voice of the people. So this is why I'm so hot about this. I don't even know why they even term it SAVE Act, even though that's the acronym that makes up for it. And you ain't saving nothing. No. Other than somebody that shouldn't be in office position. So they should just save it. Save my position even though I'm a bad politician.
It's amazing how blatant it is. And it's disturbing. But you know, you coming in and we talked about before we got on that fire. We need this. That fire needs to also incentivize people to get educated and to have that understanding of it's not only voting, but it matters who you vote for.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And it can't be about their rhetoric. It has to be about what they actually have done. What did you vote for? How is your lifestyle structured? What are you doing that impacts the community? Because right now we have people talking about family rights that are telling people that they don't have any rights. You shouldn't be able to feed your kids. You shouldn't be able to have school that is public and free, but they're family values. You know, if you can keep a community uneducated, then they're easier to influence. And that's what the goal is to keep a dumb community. You know, we go now, my Masonic group go now as a mentors in a school where we talk about civic education. Because we need to make sure that these kids understand the three branches of government, which they don't. They have no idea. These are juniors and seniors that have never heard of the three branches of government. And the first time I went in there, I was saddened. But then as we've gone along and we've had more conversations and done more things with them, then they're now going sharing that with their peers. And that's how we have to do. We have to pass it along, just like we pass all these other stories along, pass the education. You know, you got the legislative, you got the judicial, and then you have the executive branch. And you have to understand that it comes from all three levels, the federal, the state, and then the city. Right. And we need to understand who those players are.
And I think the important part about that too is as well is it needs to be repetitive. Mm-hmm. The one thing working with education departments and curriculum and whatnot is like they say, well, we cover that in the 3rd grade, or we'll cover that in the 5th grade, or we'll cover that in the 8th grade. Some things need to be covered at multiple grades and points of time. And I think this is one of them. Branches of government, how they work. They need to get that. You can't wait till only high school. It needs to also be introduced when they're younger as well. And then re-educate them again as they get older so that they can be responsible and to be the citizens that we would want them to be knowledgeable, to think critically. So absolutely.
Yeah, well, one of the things that I am blessed to have happened in my life is my parents took me voting with them. Mm-hmm. Like they had the little bitty booths where the kids can go. I did that with my kids. Now my children are very engaged in the voting process. They're probably a little bit more fiery than I am. But that process passed along. We got to get back to doing that. We have to get back to that unification. Why I love working with Gwen, because the faith-based community has always been in the forefront of the movement. NAACP was founded based upon faith-based opportunities. That's where we had to go. We had to go to the church in order to have meetings. We are foundationally built off of that faith base. And then we have the relationship with all the Divine Nine. There's an MOU with every branch of the Divine Nine. And we all work cooperatively together. So once we start uniting and unifying in the process of making sure people have opportunities, we can't be stopped. But the problem is we branch off. We fall this way, we fall that way, and we forget the importance of community versus recognition. Like, I love staying in the background. You haven't met me because I don't try and get in front of the camera. I try and be everywhere. I'm about to work. We have a mobile unit that we drive around that can educate people on voting. It has 6 computers in it. And we go around, we register people to vote. You can check your ballots. I did 43 of these things. Don't tell my job. But I did 43 of these events last year. Okay. And the year before, when we launched it 2 years ago. But we are trying to go where the people are at. And we're trying to make sure that they're educated. And the churches have great programs. But people ain't going to church no more. So the church got to get outside and be outreachers just like us. Right. And that's where our partnership comes in. And that's where there's a great unified push to help the community.
It's towards the end of my tenure at the museum here. One of the things that I was involved with is initiative. It was taken and massaged and reframed in a different way. But what I introduced was the social justice identity of the Black church. And that's what you're talking about. The Black church historically has always been involved with social justice, which is a part of the political environment that's going on, oppression and things of that nature. And I think, unfortunately, too many churches have swayed away from that responsibility of having that power. So it's great to hear about the involvement in the churches that are involved to continue that on. We need more churches to do that, but we also need to have, and I think that probably actually will bring people into church when they see that it's, real change and real concerns are being addressed. Whether it's about education, whether it's about food insecurity, whether it's about, opportunities, jobs, employment, all those types of things, they matter for a full community. And I know the NAACP has always been involved with that, since the very beginning, and you talked about the roots of the church.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And we're trying, I have 15 committees. And each one of them are active, and they have to be active because we have so many different things and issues going on. And voting all triggers into that, because whether you're trying to take care of somebody's health care, you're trying to take care of their education, you're trying to take care of them economically, that's all going to be fueled by the legislation and the policy that's written by these government officials. And if they're putting restrictions on help to our community, then we're stuck. We have to figure out the workaround. And all of it is interconnected. And that's why I go to Winton Terrace. Winton Terrace drives me crazy. Drives me crazy because there is so much opportunity of voting power in Winton Terrace. And there's so much of a need. And I'm not trying to just point out Winton Terrace, but there's lots of Winton Terraces all over the place.
All over the country.
Yeah, all over the country. But if you don't use your voting voice, then you're not visible to be seen. I can't see how you hurting if you ain't telling me.
Yes.
You know, that's why veterinarian school is so hard. Because the dog, the cat, whatever the animal is, can't tell you where they hurting at. Whereas a human being can tell you, oh, I have a pain here. Fix this. That's what your voting voice does. This is where my pain is. You said I need you to fix it.
Right. Wow. So with, the NAACP, you have a website, you have information, and I pulled some information here. It said, according to the Pew Research Center, there are 34 million eligible black voters in the U.S., which is approximately 14% of all eligible voters. And so, we talked about voter turnout. We talked about barriers. How is the NAACP playing a role in getting election reminders and information out?
Well, we were very active on social media in regards to putting information out. We do panels. We do candidate forums. We did this last summer, we did what we call the bench to the block tour. We took all the judges out and had them do panels in 3 different neighborhoods to explain what they do. Because once again, it's the why. People don't know why they're voting or why they're going to vote for this person unless you go out there and explain to them what they actually do and how their system works. So we took the judges out, and that's how we got to the point of talking about the jury pool. Because people didn't understand that the judges don't have any control over who's allowed to get on the jury pool. It's a registered voter. And if you're not registered to vote, you don't get in the jury pool. The judge don't get to go say, hey, I need them 5 people from over there in that neighborhood because this affects that neighborhood. No, there's a voting registration pool that pulls the candidates for the jury pool. So we're doing a lot of things. We're at every event we can be at. But, we're a volunteer organization.
Right.
We only as good as the volunteers. And that's why we love Alpha Phi Alpha, because Alpha Phi Alpha comes to volunteer. We love the churches. The churches come to volunteer. SG Road, the Deltas. All the Divine Nine.
Yeah.
All the Divine Nine. We recruit. Come on. We all in this together. And once we understand and believe that we are in this together, then we can get over the hump. Because that's what our ancestors did.
Right.
And we all ancestrally prepared. We seen what they did. That's why you read the book that you're reading. That's why we need to read and educate ourselves so we can see where they went right and where they went wrong. And let's be better at what we're trying to do because we have knowledge from the past.
Wow, absolutely. Amen to that. So one of my final questions I have for you is this: if a voter encounters some issues, how can we report voting issues? How can you advise on that?
So there's always going to be a number in place to make a phone call. They can ask for somebody that is at the facility to help. There's always an oversight supervisor. We actually have people that go do what we call poll watchers that'll just sit back and watch. And if they see that there's an issue, they can help navigate that person to the phone call that they need to make in order to get things sorted out. We had a couple situations last year where we had, last election, where we had people have their voting opportunity fixed because there was a mistake. And mistakes happen. Mm-hmm. And we were able to get it so that they can cast their vote. We don't want anybody to have to walk away. We don't want them to have to sign a provisional ballot if we can figure out how to fix it. And often there is a fix because there was, something that could have been dotted or crossed that didn't happen.
Okay. And I have listeners from all over Cincinnati, Ohio, Dallas, 8 different countries as well. Mm-hmm. And so my question to you is this: if someone has not become a member of the NAACP or the NAACP, I'm sorry, or want to be involved a little bit more, can you give your elevator pitch of why they should be involved and how they can be involved?
So my elevator pitch for why they should be involved is because we're out fighting for the community, and it's not linked to just your race. It's linked to opportunities. Opportunities are important, and that's what we're fighting for. We've had over 77 legal challenges with this administration and have won 75 of them already. So we're out there fighting. We're fighting in the court system. We're fighting in the street. We're fighting on your behalf to make sure that you have opportunity. That is the big key, opportunity. And when you have an opportunity, you take advantage of it. And you get a chance to be that what they call American dream that everybody is seeking. But without opportunity, that can't happen. Right. That does not happen. So you can go to our website, Cincinnati NAACP, NAACP.com, and you can join. You can find out more information. Or you can go to the national site for those that are out of this market, NAACP.org, and it'll give you information in regards to what we're doing. We've got our national convention coming up in July. It's going to be in Chicago this year.
Okay.
There's some great headline speakers. So it'd be an opportunity to go up there and meet some of the, the legislators that are making changes, some of the great activists that are out in the community, and branches from all over the country.
Actually, it would be a good time to go because you have the Obama Center that's going to be
Absolutely.
opening up, so that's going to be brand new.
Somebody figure something out.
Yeah. That was strategic. That was a good move. Very good move. Well, David, I appreciate you. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you for sharing the information. Thank you for the work that you do. You talked about it's a volunteer organization, so you have your job that you do to make a living, but you are giving back to the community. You're being a servant leader, and I just want to appreciate you for the work that you continue to do.
Thank you. Appreciate
you.
The fight to vote continues. It's time to arm ourselves with the truth and knowledge amid falsehoods about party politics. Party politics has never been static. They've evolved, fractured, and realigned over time. The Democratic Party, founded in 1792, and the Republican Party, established in 1854, both carried competing ideologies within their own party. Even under Abraham Lincoln, the first Republican president, the vision was clear. The radical Republicans pushed for a more transformative vision of Reconstruction than Lincoln's more modest approach. Just look up the Wade Davis bill that Lincoln vetoed. See the sanctions that proposed to be placed on the Confederacy. It was the Northern Democrats and the radical Republicans that laid the groundwork for the first wave of civil rights legislation and the dawn of Reconstruction. As the 19th century gave way to the 20th century, new factions of white insecurity emerged, from the Republican Redeemers, who sought to restore a racial pecking order, to the lily white movement of the Republican Party, which marginalized black political power. These shifts reminds us that party identity is never fixed. It reflects the people, spirit, and priorities within it. Political statements like the Southern Manifesto of 1956 further underscore how political realignment has often been defined by responses to civil rights and black advancement. Would there have been a Tea Party or MAGA if there wasn't a black man duly elected to the Oval Office? Black advancement has always been the trigger to white insecurity. The names can change, and the insecure spirit remains. Swaying from one party to the next, some folks just can't get out of their own way to be decent, righteous human beings. While we have 2 major parties, there are 55 ballot qualified parties in 1 or more states. So the question isn't simply about party loyalty, it's about principles. because political parties are just houses, and it's the people inside them who determine whether they become a home rooted in humanity and equal justice in real time. There's no way I'm going to put my feet up in a house with a Confederate flag on the wall. I'm just not going to do it. I'm your scholar and gentleman in a hoodie. Know thy truth and know thy history.